This evening on Nationwide, in advance of Holocaust Memorial Day here in Ireland tomorrow, we travel with a group of Irish singers who are heading off on a journey to the darker corners of Europe where during World War II unspeakable acts happened. Guest presenter Damien Tiernan meets the members of the Island of Ireland Peace Choir.
You're very welcome to Nationwide and to Krakow in Poland on this special programme with the Island of Ireland Peace Choir. The members of the choir come from different parts of Ireland, north and south, and even some from Scotland. It's a mixed Catholic and Protestant choir who've performed concerts all over Ireland and on occasion travel overseas with their message of peace. Today, they've come to Krakow in southern Poland. Krakow is one of the oldest cities in Poland, with a population of 750,000 people. The medieval city centre is beautifully preserved, well able to cope with the 10 million or so tourists that come here every year. Like many, we're using Krakow as a base to visit some of the most important historical and cultural sites on the planet. Auschwitz, the salt mines and the Oskar Schindler factory. While here, the choir will perform a number of impromptu concerts. All are pleased to be here, but are apprehensive about performing and of the emotions that will be brought up, particularly visiting Auschwitz, where mass killing took place. Phil Brennan is the choir leader. Phil, tell us, how did the Peace Choir start?
At the time of the Omagh bomb in 1998, I was living in Gorey but teaching in Waterford, Damien, and we all remember that fateful day on the 15th of August 1998. I went back to school 2 weeks later and we had a justice group in the school, and many of them were really appalled by what happened. So we made links with Omagh, and the students heard about this girl, Claire Gallagher, in Omagh, who lost her sight in the bomb. I think they felt an empathy with her. She was their age, she was about 15. She was a brilliant pianist, and she struck a chord on many levels with them. Claire was sort of the embodiment of something that must come out of Omagh. A few years later, 7 years later, that same 15-year-old girl, now in her early 20s, was getting married, and she asked me would I do the music, and I got a group together from Waterford and from Omagh. We really worked hard at it because we knew that Claire wouldn't see her wedding, but she'd sense her wedding maybe in a way that the rest of us wouldn't, and that music was going to be the powerful medium. So we were singing Danny Boy around the table at the wedding reception, and Claire came over to us and she said, Phil, just keep this group together. So the current Island of Ireland Peace Choir evolved out of the story of Omagh, but drew its inspiration from Claire.
Why have you come to Poland? Is this a spiritual journey for you and your choir colleagues?
It is, Damien. I think first and foremost we want to honour the legacy of the fallen. So many people perish, we know the statistics, and we just, through our music, want to in some way pay homage to people who died, who were at the victims of merciless people. And I suppose for us to be here is simply to remember, simply not to let what happened be forgotten. We believe that our message is really important, and we believe that it's time for humanity to tune into a new frequency and just to care for our fellow brother and sister, because if anything embodies just how crazy ideologies can be when they're pushed to an extreme, it's what happened in Auschwitz. And fast forwarding to today, we see it still happening in different parts of the world. And when people hear us, if it connects or if it opens their pores to something deeper and maybe something more mystical that we need to return to, so be it.
Before we set off to our first location, the concentration camp that was Auschwitz, the choir gets some practice in at our hotel.
I suppose it's the dynamics of the group. I suppose it's the harmonies. That's what I've always loved about the choir. It's hearing the harmonies and learning new songs, and it's just bringing a lovely group of people together that all love music.
It really gives you a lovely calm feeling. It's very meditative. You know, it's like a kind of a mindfulness all of its own, you know, so it's great.
I couldn't imagine not being in the choir. Even myself, I find like if I'm having a bad day, I come to choir and I just feel 100% better when I'm leaving. There's a healing about the music and the harmonies and everything. It's just amazing.
Members of the choir come from many walks of life, and like me, are slightly nervous and apprehensive.
This is my first trip away with the group, and I'm excited about it, but I hope everything go well. I don't know about Auschwitz. I read about it, the death camp. I don't know what way. I'm after speaking to people in relation to the journey that goes on out there and what way you'd feel after it. I don't really know, but I'm looking forward to it.
I just find it really hard to believe that that actually ever happened. I can't understand how some people could have put other people through that much pain. So in a way, like, I know they exist, but I'm still kind of going there, kind of like, is it an actual place? Like, why does this place actually exist?
For us, it's a greater awareness, and we like to think that we would bring a little bit of hope and a little bit of healing.
There's somewhat of a quietness on the bus as we drive the 66 kilometres west to Auschwitz. We enter the complex, meet our tour guide and get our headphones. We've secured special permission to film here. Auschwitz and its extension Birkenau saw the murder of 1.1 million people, mostly Jews. 200,000 were children. So we're just arriving here at the former concentration camp Auschwitz, and we're about to go through the most famous or infamous gates in history. There's a certain degree of trepidation amongst the choir members and myself about what feelings will be invoked. The inscription reads, "Work will set you free." It was through these gates that hundreds of thousands came, never to return. Then we are in and around the complex of buildings. The information coming through the earphones and what we see on the walls is nearly too much. We hear about those being brought here by railway. We see the pictures, the faces staring back at us. We see their suitcases. We hear about how they were murdered in the gas chambers, being assured they were going to take a shower. We see the empty canisters of poison. And the shoes. The thousands of shoes. We go into the small chamber where 2,000 people at a time were crammed in. The door locked, and Zyklon B poured in through holes such as this. We can't even begin to imagine the deaths, the horrendous deaths. After which, the bodies were stripped of gold, teeth and jewellery, hair cut off, bodies burned in crematoriums. Just beyond the wall, where some prisoners were executed, are the nearby perimeter walls and fencing. And yes, traffic passes, life goes on. But in here, the meaning of life is... I can't really say. What are you thinking?
I'm not sure. It's a numbing experience. You hear about it before you come, but when you're here, I don't know, you see pictures of children coming off trains, being separated from their fathers, with the mothers walking towards a destiny that they didn't really understand. They were sort of fooled into thinking that they would be reposted into new dwellings down the road and have a new life. And little did they know within 15 minutes they'd all be dead. You know, it's just... It would make you wonder how humanity can stoop to the level where the people orchestrating all of this could deem this normal. Because there's just nothing, it's grotesque. It's, and one of the quotes we heard in there was, humanity is bound to repeat this, it's condemned to repeat unless it remembers the past. And I think we should all call here and just reflect on it, but not dwell on it too much, because the scale of it is just numbing, it's sickening.
Oh, it makes me realise how lucky I am, really. That's, I suppose, what I've taken away from it.
I suppose the efficiency of the whole system, really, and to kill somebody wasn't enough. You had to plunder the bodies then as well. It wasn't enough to just kill or torture or exploit. They plundered then, and that was the bit that really got to me, and the experiments as well, that really, I found that very upsetting, to be honest.
I just felt numb. I thought I'd get upset going along, but I just felt so numb by it all. And what surprised me, I suppose, was like you could see it physically what was going on, but I'd say mentally, I was just trying to picture myself in their shoes and what would I do. And mentally, I think it's just as bad as what they physically went through. Like, that really struck me. It's disgusting. It's just so, it's so disgusting.
What human beings can do, it's just unbelievable. And there's no doubt, Damien, that will happen again. You know, that's the way life is. It happened in the 90s in Bosnia, and looking at that there now, just probably a carbon copy of what was going on.
We come across a group of Jewish people who've come here, many from Israel, making their emotional journey.
It is so important to be here. My father was born in Poland. He spent the war in Siberia, where he was sent with his family. His grandparents and two of his aunts went to the gas chambers. As a Jew, we hear all the time about the Holocaust. We hear about the terrible things that happened. And it was important for me, at least once in my life, to come to Poland and, first of all, to pay my respects to the people who lost, the millions who lost their lives here, and also to try and understand something of what they went through, even though I am sure that till my very last day I will never ever be able to understand the atrocities of what went on.
We take the short journey to Birkenau, which the Nazis built to increase the rate of killing. Where once there were trees to hide the murder houses, very little remains. Nobody here is a tourist. We're visitors. We're mourners. The choir pays its solemn respects with a soft prayer through music.
Sleep tonight, and may your dreams be realized. If the thundercloud passes rain,
I don't really know what to say about it, to be honest. It's just a bit overwhelming, to say the least. Especially when it comes to the women and kids. Obviously it's devastating for everyone, but I'm a mum and I have kids, and the thought of, you know, being separated and, you know, your kids being brought into a situation like that is just horrific.
Shadows lengthen, the spirits wane. We visit one of the last remaining buildings at Birkenau. Many of us are overwhelmed.
Horror and evil and pain, suffering, there isn't words for it. I just think it's too much. It's too much in one day to take in. But what struck me more was coming out and looking at my group, and their heads were down and it was silence, and it was like a sense of, you know, just absolute dread.
And as a Polish citizen, our tour guide explains why this place remains so important today.
Poland was most affected by the Second World War because it was a first victim of the Second World War, and it's still important to remember that to never happen. So we still remember that, we still fight for this memory, and you see this museum, this commemoration is also important for Polish and whole international community.
The choir leaves Auschwitz in silence as they gather their thoughts. But all are content. They've brought their words of peace to this place where so many atrocities happened. Welcome back to Nationwide and this special programme on the Island of Ireland Peace Choir. The choir is visiting locations around Krakow, and today they've come to the famous old salt mines, where 400 feet underground they'll perform an impromptu concert. Operating for more than 800 years, these mines produced table salt up until 10 years ago. Deep, deep down in the mine is the amazing, and I don't say that lightly, St. Kinga's Chapel, or the underground Salt Cathedral of Poland. The cavern became a chapel, lovingly carved out by the miners over the years. The statues are so detailed and well done, they literally make you stop and stare in awe. Even the crystals of the chandeliers are made from rock salt. The choir has been given special permission to perform here for a few precious minutes. A kind of elegant flash mob which enthralls unsuspecting tourists. And our next stop was the Oskar Schindler factory. 8 years ago, the former pots and pans factory reopened to the public as a world-class museum. And I must say they've done it very well, as it's not a biography of Oskar Schindler, but rather the story of Krakow and its people before, during and after World War II. It shows how everything was so ordinary before the war, how the people were just like you and me, and it puts into context some of the horrible things we saw at Auschwitz.
There will be an answer, let it be.
And at the end of the tour of the Oskar Schindler factory, there's a room filled with quotes from people who saw horror but believed in hope. There was one quote inside that struck you?
There was a quote on the wall just at the end of the museum about a group of people who were terrified and full of fear, but they said the person they were with started singing, and they started singing with them, and when they were singing they forgot the fear.
How important a message is that?
I think it's hugely important, and it's the message of the choir as well, that we have people from all over Ireland, from all different backgrounds, coming together and singing just to promote that message of peace and reconciliation, which is so important, particularly in the world today, which the news every night is so full of acts of terror and violence.
Whisper words of wisdom, let it be.
The Mogila Abbey complex was founded in the 13th century by the Cistercians, and the basilica on the site, a favourite of the late Pope John Paul II, has some of the best acoustics in southern Poland.
The last few days, I would say the music. It has to be, the music, the places we played in, the sound of it all, it was special. It was really special. And it kind of made sense, do you know what I mean? The songs we do make sense after you see places like that,
I think that there's so much meaning to the music. Sometimes when I played music before, sometimes it was purely as a function, but this music is very expressive. It's really coming from the heart.
I love it. I love just like the feeling you get when you're singing the songs. It's really nice.
I think it's very powerful. It has a message of peace, which I really like. I think that we can all connect over it, and I think that it's very powerful like that.
Change and decay in all around I see.
And I'm going to say goodnight to you now, from myself and from the choir, after some precious moments this evening on what has been an emotional journey over these past few days here in southern Poland. And that journey was a personal one for all the choir members, especially the experiences felt in Auschwitz. And they take many strong and unforgettable memories with them back to Ireland, north and south.
On next Monday's Nationwide, old Irish stone farm buildings find a new use in the modern era as a gin school in County Louth and as a crafts shop and coffee house in County Kildare.
Next tonight, breathing new life into many an old favourite. Folk musicians hit the streets of Ennis for the Flak Yule. That's after the break here on RTE1.